Good evening. How is the rebuild of our city really going? Where are the international investors, and does the gloss from the government match the reality? Tonight, Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce Chief Executive Peter Townsend is my guest, and Lynched starts right now. Thanks for joining us. How is the commercial rebuild of this city really going? Will it ramp up this year? It's fair to say there are plenty of construction happening in our city, but is it heading in the right direction? Well, to get a bird's eye view of this is Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce Chief Executive Peter Townsend. Good evening. Thanks for joining me on Lynched.
Pleasure, Chris.
Before we discuss the important stuff, let's discuss the royal couple that were in Christchurch last week. You had a chance to meet them, you hosted them for lunch, and, correct me if I'm wrong, you spent 15 minutes personally with the royals. I want the goss, I want the lowdown. What did you talk about, Peter?
You're not going to get any of that, but yes, we did. On April the 14th, they came for lunch at the Air Force Museum, and before they went into the lunch, where we were hosting them with 500 people, we had 15 minutes, just to brief them on where we were at and how they thought the trip was going so far, and give them a little bit of a preview of what might happen when they went into the main hall. Absolutely delightful couple, immediately relaxing, no pretense whatsoever, genuinely interested in Christchurch, genuinely interested in our people, and just generally interested in what makes life tick too.
So what did you tell them?
Well,
did you ask for some money?
They actually said that we should have charged a whole lot of money for every one of the attendees to attend the lunch, and that would have rebuilt Christchurch. But I'm not sure we're quite on the same scale. But no, look, they were really moved by what they'd seen down in the centre of the city in the morning. They came to a future-focused luncheon, so it was all about the future, the aspiration of Christchurch, and I guess it was my job to tell them where we were at and where we might be heading to, some of the stuff we might talk about later on in this program, and give them a sort of a view of what was happening, the scale of what was going on, the strategic direction we were heading in, and how we were going to get there.
How big of a deal is it having the Royals visit Christchurch, do you think, in terms of monetary value? Can you put it down to dollar terms?
Unbelievable. Look, I was talking to someone from Ngātahu who was in the jet with them down on the shot over. They reckon that the photograph that went around the world of that jet spinning around on the shot over river was worth about $10 million in advertising revenue. So having them here in Christchurch, fantastic. Having them with us at the Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce, unbelievable. Within 20 minutes of the lunch finishing, the Daily Mail in the UK had our photographs all over it, and there was a step-by-step talk through of what had gone on at the lunch and why it was considered important for the future of Christchurch. I mean, you can't buy that sort of coverage, and we've seen since then the video that we presented at the lunch, which was a beautifully presented video that people can download right now from YouTube if they wish. That's gone viral. There are over now 200,000 hits on a local website, and it's on websites all over the world.
That is advertising money can't buy. Do you suspect or do you hope that will turn to dollar signs? Because at the moment, international investors, it's a bit of a hairy thing at the moment. Are you hoping the right eyes will see this though?
Yeah, look, it isn't so much about the dollars. It's about the impressions people have of our city. What is Christchurch up to? Where are we at? Where are we going? Why should they be part of it? So it's actually sort of one step above the dollars. From the dollars perspective, I've said for a long time now that we're not short of capital in Christchurch. Capital's flying around all over the place. And it's not where it flies that's important, it's where it lands. And we need to create an environment in Christchurch which encourages capital to land. The banks in this city are loaded with cash. I'll just give you one example. There are now 8,000 homeowners who have cash settled on their homes. That's about somewhere between $3 and $4 billion worth of cash sitting in homeowners' bank accounts waiting to go into the repairs and rebuilds of houses in the city.
That's the stories we don't hear enough of.
Absolutely. No shortage of cash. Let me take one step further, Chris. There are 4 urban myths in the city that we just have to dispel quickly. That's one of them. that capital is flying out of our city and capital isn't flying in. Nonsense. Capital is flying around all over the place. We just need to make sure it lands. The second one is that the myth of population flight, that we've suffered this enormous population drain in our city. No, we haven't. Population's going up, not down. We've got population in flight as people come in to help us build the city. So we need to dispel that myth. The third one is that we've suffered enormous economic downturn. No, we haven't. They're members of mine. Our membership's growing, not shrinking. The economic activity in this region is unprecedented. Male unemployment in Christchurch right now is at 2.1%. And the last myth is that we are well down the track in terms of our recovery. No, we're not. We're about 10% into it.
I want to pick you up on that because we keep hearing the rockstar economy. It's largely based on the activity happening in Christchurch. In a really weird way, in a perverse way, the earthquakes have done the economy locally a favour, because before the earthquakes, construction wasn't that good in terms of the national average. We were below the national average, weren't we?
Yeah, and our central city was dying. We all remember that. There was the central city was hollowing out very quickly. Now, setting aside the tragedy of the earthquakes, and we should never underrate that, setting aside all the emotional and stress dimensions of the earthquake, you're right. We are now the recipients of 3 years of Fonterra's total export earnings being dumped into a population of under 500,000 people. That has never happened before, and that is money from offshore that is coming into Christchurch. It's called insurance. We all have to hate insurance companies. The reality is that about $32 billion worth of the $40 billion worth of damage in our city is covered by insurance. So we're going to receive a lot of cash, and we're going to have to learn how to deal with it. It's a positive challenge, but it's a big one.
Perception is everything, though. And I want to point to things like the CBD. There's still that perception out there that not enough is being done. The rebuild is essentially stalled. It's fair to say Addington, going great. But when it comes to Sarah, not so good.
People are building commercial buildings where they can. So you're seeing in Victoria Street, Addington, Morehouse Ave, Blenheim Road, a lot of commercial activity going on because they can. In the central city, still a lot of difficulties. I mean, we're still demolishing buildings in the central city, 1,100 buildings coming down.
It's hard to believe it, isn't it, though? Over 3 years on from the earthquakes, we're still considering what buildings to bring down. I mean, that's a disgrace, isn't it?
Well, no, I think the complexity of what we've been through is understandable. That I would like to see much more definition about where we're heading, when we're heading, who's going to do it, how it's going to be done. There are two things my members are looking for. One is what they call a framework of certainty. Give us an idea of the big plan. Give us an idea of where we're going. And another one is more information. They just want more information about everything so they can make investment decisions based on quality information. And I'm not sure we're getting enough information out into our community.
I want to talk about communication next. Coming up, show me the money. There's plenty around, but where is it going? That's next. Stay with us. Welcome back to Lynched. Peter Townsend is my guest tonight. Peter, and what can only be described in my view as an advert in the New Zealand Herald a couple of weeks ago. It said, and I quote Sarah, the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Act provides special powers to fast-track the recovery. I thought that was a laugh out loud moment. Fast-track the recovery. There's been nothing like a fast-track of the recovery, particularly in the CBD. We have to admit that, don't we? There is this perception that we've locked out the businesses and they've gone out to Lincoln Road, they've gone down to Addington. What do you see in that?
A couple of dimensions to that. The first is that I don't even call it the CBD anymore, it's the central city. You will never get all those businesses coming back into the central city, and you probably shouldn't. I mean, if you were designing the city from scratch, you would have businesses inculcated into your community, and people would be working out in the community rather than everyone trucking into the CBD every morning and trucking out every night. Those days are gone.
The horse has bolted, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, and that's all right. Okay, remember the central city was dying before the earthquake.
Well, that's right.
So we need to recreate something that is quite different as we go forward, and I think we will. But I do take your point that we're not getting there fast enough, we're not getting there with enough certainty, and I don't think we're getting there with enough clarity. I want someone who wants to invest in the central city to be able to be introduced to someone in Sarah or the CCDU who says, I'm your person that's going to take you through a process which at the end of the day is going to deliver your desire, which is a 5-star hotel in the central city.
So you accept then we do have an issue with communication with Sarah. Last week in the Christchurch Press, 2 phenomenal articles saying that local business people, some really good developers, are getting frustrated that nobody from Sarah is picking up the phone and saying, hey, we want you back into the central city, what do you want us to do to help you? And that is appalling when you hear those sorts of stories, isn't it? That must be so frustrating for your members who are hard-working, decent Christchurch business owners.
Yeah, I think there can be more clarity of process. We need to case manage people back into the central city, and I haven't seen evidence of that yet. And I don't need to defend Sarah; they can defend themselves, and I don't need to defend the CCDU.
Well, they've got 15 communication staff; they should be able to defend themselves.
And I've just got one called me, so I don't want to do that. But I do understand the complexities of what we're going through, the unprecedented nature of rebuilding a city that has simply never happened before. My overarching comment on that, Chris, is that we sometimes look as if we're trying to build our city through the back door when we should be doing it through the front door. And the front door means the lights are on, there's a welcome mat out, there's a place to go to when you get inside. The back door means a bit of smoke and mirrors, and I think we can do better.
Well, we need to be honest about it, don't we? Roger Sutton is a puppet for Jerry Brownlee. You cannot go to Roger Sutton and say, Roger, can you get rid of that building, please, because we've got a business owner coming here that wants to build right now. You would have to go to the minister. Fair call?
The reality is it's a ministry of government, so of course you have to go to the minister.
So what does Roger Sutton do?
The structure of Sarah is such that because it operates as a government ministry, it requires approvals as any other government ministry does. You could ask the question, should it be a government ministry? But as long as it is a government ministry, then it's got to be, you've got to play by those rules.
Well, that's a good question that you raised. Do we need Sarah? And is it time for Sarah to go and get the council back on track? It seems we've got a competent council now, Peter.
Sarah's still on track to go, 2016. So we do need, you're quite right, we need to start thinking right now, what happens after Sarah? Is it that everything is transferred back to the council? Doubt it. Is it that we have some sort of self-governing authority that works with the council and with government, but in a post-Sarah environment to affect the rest of the rebuild? I mean, central government has a vested interest in our city for a long time yet. They put an enormous amount of money in. They want to make sure that what they have started is finished, and I'm sure they would like nothing better than to hand it all over to central government, to local government, and say bye-bye. But I'm not sure our local government or any local government has the capability to do what needs to be done on its own.
Look, without a doubt, I think the government is well intended, but it's fair to say the ring-fenced approach hasn't worked, and there's this notion that the CBD should have been allowed to develop organically. Is there some truth? I know it's easy to say this now,
no,
but do you agree with that?
No, I
you
wouldn't. I think that in times of crisis, such as we've been through in Christchurch City, you need to have a certain amount of autocracy. You need to have a certain amount of rules that bully people through to various processes if they won't go there of their own accord. If we just let it go organically, I think we would have been up in a real mess by now. But the critical issue, which neither of us have raised so far, the fundamental issue is that we've got to have central government, local government and the community working towards agreed common objectives. That's the critical issue.
Well, timeframes would be good.
If we agree, well, timeframes is one of them. Cost sharing is another one. Who's going to do what is the third. Who's going to handle the unexpected events that inevitably happen. There's not clarity on those issues, and that's causing a whole lot of grief and a whole lot of tension, which doesn't need to happen. We're a small country, we're a small city, we've got a big rebuild on our hands. For goodness sake, let's get together and do it together.
Your members want certainty, they want timeframes on anchor projects. You still really haven't got those. You've been given a roundabout yearly quarter results as to what to expect, but that's not good enough, is it? Why is it then? Can you pick up the phone and say to the minister, listen, I've got investors here, local businesses that want to open up. They need to know when the convention centre will be open. They need to know when the stadium's done. They need to know where, whatever. I feel that the priority to create some lovely, the Avon Loop thing, that's all very well and good, but that's not going to create investment, is it?
One of the things we've been saying to Sarah and the Minister and the CCDU is, please give us as much definition as you can in terms of timeframes. As I said before, who's doing what, when they're doing it, really, really critical, because you're right, that is exactly what's needed, a framework of certainty so people can make investment decisions.
I want to talk about international investors. We know there have been several government agencies and ministers, and even Bob Parker in the last term, go over to Asia to try and get people to invest in the city. But as far as I know, and you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong on this, there's actually been no international investor who's put up their hand and said, I'm coming to build that building.
there are a lot of international investors just swarming around trying to work out where they're going to land or if they're going to land.
But you want to get out the contract, don't you? So would you well sign here, please?
Yeah, and again, they need certainty to do that. So that's a sort of a catch-22 situation because they just don't have the certainty. There are a lot now of international companies that are working with local companies on various parts of the rebuild, and the hospital at Burwood is a good example of that.
But in terms of the anchor projects, though, you must be getting really frustrated because I thought it was absolutely amazing that there was no business case put forward to the people of Christchurch first to say, these are why we need these projects. It was all the Disneyland dream. And look, I was there when they made the announcement several years ago. It looked great, it looked fantastic. But it feels to me the anchor projects, the wheels are starting to come off. They're looking at downsizing the convention centre. The roof over the stadium looks like it's a no-goer. Nobody's really putting up their hand to build this convention centre. Doesn't look good, does it?
The convention centre will be built. You can rest assured of that. But you're right. We have been pleading for some time for a sort of a plan that gives us economic prioritisation. Is it more important to build a convention centre or a health precinct? Can someone please tell me that? Where does the stadium fit into the overall scheme of things and how important is it? I mean, you talk to the rugby guys, they'll say that Christchurch is going to die without a stadium. At the other end of the spectrum, there are people that say that we just don't need it. So how do we get more clarity about that? I think we get it through more information, which comes back to my common theme. Please give us more information about key projects, about the city plan, about the big plan, so that we can all make our own decisions about our investing in the future of Christchurch.
It's interesting you say this because I feel you've softened recently. You were so
That's very nice of you to say that, because no one's ever said that to me.
You were so supportive of the convention centre,
Yeah.
you were so supportive of the stadium, but I get the impression your members are residents of Christchurch. They too are going through hell. They too probably don't have homes. And I get the impression from the Chamber's point of view that you've realised that you can't have it all in one go. That I feel you've backed off a bit.
No, I haven't backed off. I've always been realistic through this whole process.
But you've acknowledged that there are some priorities like housing that takes precedent.
I've always acknowledged that we need to prioritise the rebuild of our central city in terms of what we do when. I'm a little bit concerned about the big black hole in the council's finances.
Oh, Quarter-Lengthy report.
Because that's something that has changed the situation for us, and we need to respond to that. I have never said that we shouldn't be putting total emphasis on the people that are disadvantaged in our city, but that must be done in parallel with the rebuild of our city. You can't just do one and then do the other. We've got to do all of this together.
We need to take a break. I want to continue with the CBD and the international investment argument next. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Lynched. Peter Townsend is my guest. Peter, let's get back to international investment. At the end of the day, there is none.
Not yet.
That concern you?
No, it doesn't. Look, we're about 8 to 10% of the way into the rebuild. It's being led by housing. As I said before, we're still demolishing commercial buildings in our central city. There are a lot of people around the world who are interested in what's going on in Christchurch. It's about timing. And I think some of our expectations in terms of when we expect things to happen are a little unrealistic, which is why I want more information.
Well, I want to talk to you about
20 years for the central city, Chris. 20 years.
Oh, don't say that, please, Peter.
It's going to happen.
That breaks my heart.
No, it shouldn't break your heart. You should be saying, I am going to be part of New Zealand's biggest ever economic development program for the next 20 years.
Okay.
Not bad.
I want to bring in a name, Warren Buffett.
Yep.
Sounds too good to be true. Now, an Australian writer was told by the head of Sarah's design team, Warren Buffett is interested. I find that laughable. And so did he. What do you say?
I don't know whether it's true or not. Is it true?
Well, I thought you would know.
Oh, I don't know Warren Buffett. I don't know whether he's interested in Christchurch. If he is, bring him on.
An American billionaire, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he's one of the richest men in the world, but one of the few people I don't know personally. But there you go. Look, people are interested in Christchurch because it will be a good economic proposition on one hand.
It's a hard sell, though, isn't it?
And because it will be the most livable city in Australasia on the other hand. I doubt whether Warren Buffett will come and live in Christchurch.
Well, he's probably watching this program right now. What would you tell him? What would you say? Why invest in Christchurch? Because, Bob Parker and, Tony Ryle and a couple of you, they went over to, different parts of Asia. It must be a hard sell. If I'm an international investor, why on earth do I want to invest in Christchurch?
It's not a hard sell if people understand the economic opportunities we've got here. Why would you invest in Christchurch? Because we've got between $40 and $50 billion worth of investment that is going to occur in this city in the next 20 years, and you can be part of it. That's why you invest in Christchurch, because we're going to create the most livable city in Australasia, and you can be part of it. That's why you invest in Christchurch, because we are the capital of the South Island, which is one of the most beautiful and attractive places in the world, and is going to be a generator of food for Asia into the foreseeable future.
You are eternally optimistic,
Christchurch
but you
is
have
the
no
capital,
choice, do you?
And that's why we want to be part of it. Someone asked me why I was optimistic, Chris, and I said, well, what's the other choice? But the reality is what I've just explained. This is about opportunity. We've done the hard yards. We've got all sorts of challenges ahead of us, but most of them are challenges about size, scale, and time frame.
Well, let's talk about one challenge, the housing crisis. We know it's happening in the city. Nick Smith announced the housing accord. It's all very well and good, but if we have this so-called influx of builders coming to Christchurch, A, do we have them, and B, where are we going to get them from? Because we don't have enough tradies in this country as it is, do we?
No. And let's put the housing thing into perspective. On February the 22nd, we lost about 10,000 houses, maybe Ashburton. We lost Ashburton on February the 22nd. We've got people coming into our city to assist us with the rebuild. They predict between 20 and 25,000. There are already about 3,000 of those people in our city now. Another Ashburton. And by the way, we've got 25 seriously damaged homes in our city, all of which are going to have to be vacated while they're being repaired or rebuilt.
You said 25, did you mean 25,000?
25,000.
Right.
Here comes another Ashburton. So can someone tell me where we're going to get the 3 Ashburtons from in the next couple of years? Now that says two things. It says, first of all, we're going to be short of accommodation in the city into the foreseeable future. Secondly, is there a better place in Australasia to invest in housing? Probably not.
Where do you see the council's place in all of this when it comes to housing, when it comes to the rebuild of the city?
Yeah, well,
have they really got their hands tied, do you think, or are they doing all right?
I'm personally involved in rebuilding my house because my house was destroyed. And I'm working with council on my building consents and my resource consents. And I have
Good luck with that.
Well, I've said to council from my own personal perspective, have you had a look at your website? Do you know how hard it is to go through your website and fill out the right form for resource consent? In a city that is rebuilding itself, it shouldn't be like that, so fix it. And I think they're listening, I hope they're listening. The consenting process is still far more clumsy than it should be. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people going to need consents on the way through, and we're just at the beginning. The council's role in this is to make it as easy as possible for all of us, not to stand in the way, not to create artificial barriers, but to be as tolerant and as giving as they can possibly be so we can all get to our endpoints in our housing rebuild. That's their role.
Peter, just quickly, this new lot's better than the last lot, aren't they? I mean, I'm not hearing so much division. I'm not hearing anything about A and B teams. I'm actually hearing a council that's doing what they're supposed to do.
I'm not going to compare them to the last lot. What I will say...
Oh, go on, it's fun.
is that
Aaron Keown will love it.
In my opinion, the Mayor is doing a great job. She came in with a very clear mandate of being open, being transparent, being accountable to her community, being involving, and being totally honest and transparent. She's done that. And she needs to keep doing it. She's a woman of her time, and I think she's doing a great job. She seems to be pulling the council along with her, and that's great. There are some stars in that council that are just starting to shine, and I think we're going to see them, and Raf Manji's one of them. I think you're going to see some wonderful people coming out through that process. The next critical step is the appointment of the Chief Executive, which is absolutely imminent.
We're nearly out of time. I just want to briefly touch on the region, not just Christchurch, but the region of Canterbury's economy. Are you concerned there's perhaps almost too much focus now on a CBD and not enough going out to the regions? Because the regions are our rural backbone, aren't they, Peter Townsend? And they're just as important. Very
clearly, the regions held us up through the earthquake. The wealth generated in the region saved Christchurch City through the earthquake, no doubt. Look, my short story on that is that as we rebuild our city, we must accelerate the regional economic development of our region so that we have additional economic growth going on sustainably in our region. And Chris, fundamentally, that's about water. How do we harvest and farm water to the benefit of our region?
10 seconds left. Give me something positive, because 20-year rebuild doesn't make me feel positive. Give me something confident when I can walk out the studio and feel proud to live in Canterbury.
Think of the cash that's coming in, get on and enjoy the ride and make the most of it. There's never been a better place to carve a career than Christchurch.
Peter Townsend, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you. And that's our show. We'll see you next week. Good night.